In 53 years of law, I received thousands of phone calls, urgent calls, desperate calls, calls from people who had lost everything. But the call I received on a Tuesday evening, in November 2009, that one was different. The man on the other end, his name was David Larson. He wasn't crying. He wasn't shouting. He was completely calm. And that calmness, that particular kind of stillness, that only comes when a person has gone so far past shock that they've reached something quieter. That told me everything. He said, "Mr. Whitmore, my wife of 19 years has been having an affair for 3 years. I found out this morning, and this afternoon, I discovered she has already transferred our house, our business, our savings, into her name, all of it, while I was at work, over the past 18 months. I have nothing left. I came home tonight, and my key doesn't work anymore. I put down my dinner. I said, come to my office first thing tomorrow." That case took 2 years. But David Larson got everything back. Every single thing. Let me tell you how. Here is what most people don't know about financial fraud within a marriage. It is shockingly easy to do, and shockingly easy to miss. Because when you trust someone completely, when you have built 19 years of life together, you stop checking, you stop verifying, you sign documents because they ask you to. You assume the accounts are fine, because they've always been fine. Carol Larson understood this perfectly. She had spent 18 months, moving systematically, quietly, through every asset she and David owned together. One document at a time, one transfer at a time. By the time David found out about the affair, Carol had already prepared her exit completely. New life, new man, new everything, funded entirely by assets that legally belonged to both of them. She had one problem. She hadn't counted on David calling me. David Larson was 51 years old, civil engineer, hard-working, quiet man, the kind of person who shows up early and stays late and never complains. He had met Carol in 1990. She was a real estate agent, sharp, confident, beautiful. Everyone who knew them said, Carol was the spark. David was the foundation. They married in 1991. Bought their first house in Austin, Texas. 3 bedrooms. Small yard. David said it was the proudest day of his life. Over the next 15 years, David built Larson Engineering Consultants. Small firm. 6 employees. Steady contracts with municipal governments. Nothing flashy, but solid. By 2008, the business was worth approximately $1.2 million. They had also paid off their home. A 4-bedroom house in a good Austin neighborhood, worth approximately $480,000, plus savings and investments, another $200,000. Total, nearly $2 million in combined assets, built over 19 years, by David's hands, with Carol beside him, or so he thought, because for the last 3 of those 19 years, Carol had not been beside him at all. She had been beside someone else entirely. His name was Marcus Reed, 44 years old, property developer. Carol had met him through her real estate work in 2006. By early 2007, the relationship was serious. Marcus Reed was not a wealthy man, not yet. He had ambition. He had plans. He had Carol. And Carol, as I would later prove in court, had made a decision sometime in early 2008. She was going to leave David. But she was not going to leave empty-handed. She began quietly, almost imperceptibly. First, she convinced David to add her name as sole signatory on the business accounts. She told him it was for efficiency. She could handle invoices and payroll, while he focused on engineering work. David agreed immediately. He trusted her completely. She had always handled the household finances. Why would this be any different? It was very different. Within 2 months of becoming sole signatory, Carol began making transfers. Small ones first. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, into an account David didn't know existed. In Carol's name only. In a bank across town. Over the next 18 months, Carol Larson executed what I can only describe as one of the most methodical financial betrayals I have encountered. In 5 decades of law, She transferred $340,000 from the business accounts into her private account. Small amounts, irregular intervals, disguised in the bookkeeping as vendor payments, equipment purchases, consulting fees, to companies that did not exist. She refinanced their home, telling David the interest rate had dropped significantly. David signed the refinancing documents without reading them carefully. The new mortgage was in Carol's name only. David's name quietly removed. In the paperwork shuffle, she told him it was a technicality, something about credit scoring. He believed her. She transferred the title of his company vehicle, a work truck worth $38,000, into her name, told him the insurance required it. She opened 3 credit cards in David's name, without his knowledge, ran up combined balances of $92,000, cash advances, transfers to her private account. By October 2009, Carol was ready. She had already signed a lease on a new apartment for her and Marcus Reed. She had already spoken to a divorce attorney. She had already begun moving personal items out of the house gradually. A box here, a bag there. So slowly David never noticed. On November 3, 2009, David came home from a work trip to San Antonio. 3 days away, he stopped at a gas station 2 miles from home, tried to use his debit card, declined, tried his credit card, declined, tried the business account card, declined. He called Carol. No answer. He drove home. His key did not work. The locks had been changed that morning. A note was taped to the door. It said, "David, I've filed for divorce. Please contact my attorney. Do not attempt to enter the property." It was signed, Carol. No, I'm sorry. No explanation. Just, Carol. David Larson sat in his car, in his own driveway, for 2 hours. Then he called my office. David came to my office the next morning. He brought everything he had, which wasn't much. Carol had taken the financial files, the business records, the tax returns, everything organized, everything gone. She had planned this extraordinarily well. But here is what Carol did not understand about financial fraud. You can take the paper. You cannot take the trail. Every bank transfer leaves a record. Every document filing leaves a timestamp. Every notarized signature leaves a notary's log. I brought in a forensic accountant, Raymond Cole, the best in Austin. I told him, "Raymond, I need you to rebuild this man's financial history from the outside in. Every account, every transfer, every dollar that moved anywhere. In the last 3 years, Raymond worked for 6 weeks. What he produced was extraordinary. A complete map of every fraudulent transfer, dates, amounts, destination accounts, all leading back to Carol's private account. And from there, to Marcus Reed's property development company. Carol had not just stolen from David. She had been funding Marcus Reed's business with David's money. The man David had never met had been living off David's 19 years of work for 18 months. When I showed David the forensic report, he looked at it for a long time. Then he said, "How much?" I said, "Our current count, just over $800,000. Between the transfers, the credit cards, the business assets, and the property." David nodded slowly, didn't say anything for almost a minute. Then he said, "Let's get it back." Carol Larson had a good attorney, a woman named Patricia Howe, aggressive, experienced family law specialist. Her strategy was clever. She argued that as David's wife and co-owner of all marital assets, Carol had full legal right to access every account and every asset, that no fraud had occurred, simply a spouse exercising her legal financial rights. She argued the home refinancing had been fully disclosed to David, that he had signed knowingly. She argued the business transfers were legitimate operational expenses, and that David simply hadn't been paying close enough attention. It was a reasonable defense. In a less thoroughly documented case, it might have worked, but Raymond Cole's forensic report was 112 pages long. Every transfer mapped, every fake vendor exposed, every credit card charge traced. And we had one more thing. Marcus Reed's business records, subpoenaed from his company, showed deposits that matched Carol's transfers exactly, date for date, amount for amount. Carol hadn't just stolen from David. She had created a paper trail, so precise, so perfectly documented, that it destroyed her own defense. The divorce proceedings and fraud case ran simultaneously. 2 courtrooms, same courthouse, same week. In the fraud case, I called Raymond Cole first. He walked the jury through 112 pages in 3 hours. Methodical, clear, devastating. Then I called David. I asked him one question. Mr. Larson, in 19 years of marriage, did you ever intentionally hide a single financial asset from your wife? He said, no, never. I asked, did she have access to every account you owned? He said, every single one. I asked, and did you ever imagine she would use that access to do what Mr. Cole has described? David looked at his hands. Then he said, I trusted her with everything I had, everything I built. That's what you do when you love someone. 3 jurors looked away. When Patricia Howe cross-examined David, she pushed hard, suggested he had been negligent, inattentive, irresponsible. David looked at her calmly and said, I was building a business to provide for my family. I apologize for not suspecting that my wife was stealing it. The courtroom went silent. Patricia Howe sat down. She had no follow-up question. Civil fraud judgment in favor of David Larson. Carol was ordered to return all fraudulently transferred assets. The house title was restored to David. The business accounts restored. The credit card debts assigned to Carol. Marcus Reed's company was ordered to return all funds traced to David's accounts. $217,000. Total recovery, $840,000. Carol Larson was also referred to the Travis County District Attorney for criminal fraud prosecution. She ultimately pleaded guilty to felony financial fraud, sentenced to 4 years probation and 200 hours community service. Marcus Reed, who had accepted stolen money into his business accounts, lost his real estate developer's license. His company folded within a year. David Larson walked out of that courthouse and stood on the steps for a moment. Just stood there, eyes closed, face up, like a man breathing fresh air. For the first time in 2 years, he shook my hand. He said, I just want to go back to work. 6 months later, Larson Engineering Consultants won its largest municipal contract ever. 12 employees now, growing steadily. I got a Christmas card from David that year. It said, back to building things. Thank you, Harold. That card is next to Grace Wheeler's postcard, right there on my desk. Carol Larson spent 18 months building a plan she thought was perfect. Every document, every transfer, every carefully timed move. She forgot one thing. Paper trails don't disappear just because you take the paper. Every dollar she moved left a footprint somewhere, in a server, in a log, in a timestamp, waiting for someone like Raymond Cole to come looking. I've seen betrayal in many forms. In 53 years, a stranger who steals from you, that wounds your wallet. A person who shares your bed, your table, your life, who looks you in the eye every morning, while systematically dismantling everything you built, that wounds something much deeper. David Larson rebuilt. Not everyone does. I'm Harold Whitmore. I'll see you in the next case.